Board to reconvene. We'll kick off this morning's meeting with a roll call from my left, please.
Brian Klausch, BLM.
Commander Brian Longbottom, U.S. Navy.
Bob Page with the County of San Bernardino.
Peter Brown, Indian Wells Valley Water District.
Nick Gleason, County of Kern.
Peggy Breeden, City Ridgecrest.
Bob Harrington with Inyo County.
Thank you. We'll start off with next with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Jim Worth. Following the pledge, please remain standing for a moment of silence, prayer, or meditation.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody, please help yourself to agendas. Please, they're posted on the. Do we have agendas out there by the chair? By the entryways, please help yourself so you can follow along with us. And I'm setting off my phone. Okay. Brings us to item number 3, public comments. This time is reserved for the public to address the board on matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to make comment right now about anything that's not on the agenda? Please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to special presentations. Special presentations. Anybody? We have no special presentations. Thank you very much. Brings us to item number 5, consent agenda. Items may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion by the board. Item A is approve the minutes of the board meeting June 15th, 2017, and B, resolution 03-17, adopting conflict of interest code, approval by FPPC. Anyone in the public wishing to make comment on our consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the board for a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to see if I could ask a question clarification on 5B. Will special counsel whose contract is recommended for approval later today have to file a 700 form?
Yes, they will, as will members of the PAC and the TAC. This resolution is dealing with our prior conflict of interest code, which is adopted, resolution number 1. We will have to amend because we have these new positions coming in that are designated filers.
Brings us to item. We need a vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes. Item number 6, approve resolution appointing Renee Westerlusk to the Policy Advisory Committee. This is an issue before us. Mr. Christensen, would you like to open us up on it?
I would be happy to do that, Mr. Chair. We'll get to my item. At the last meeting, you had appointed all the members to the PAC. We had one slot that we had overlooked. That was a slot for a member of a public water agency. And Renee Westerlusk had submitted an application, and because she's part of one of those public water systems, I think it was agreeable that we would come back at this meeting and finish off. That would be the last appointment to the PAC. There were some questions about her application. We resolved those. And so with that, we're recommending you approve the resolution 02-17, appointing Renee Westerlusk to the PAC, and that's our recommendation.
Thanks, sir. Let's open up the public for comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make comment on this item? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for consideration.
Mr. Chair, I was contacted by someone else who wanted to know why they were not appointed. And I did not answer that, only asked information whether they were served by the Indian Wells Valley Water District, and they indicated they were, but did not file back to come under that classification for consideration. So that, just so I have it open and the public understands and the board understands, there was no action other than the question.
Can I ask you a question about it?
Please.
So my understanding is that there is a person who applied to be a member of the PAC under a category.
Under a different category.
Different
yes.
category, was not, unfortunately, was not one of the ones selected, and he was curious as to why. And have we given him a response?
I did not give him a response because you and I made our choices, and then the board adopted our choices.
Okay.
So I did not have a reason that I could give him that was ours, since you and I had not talked about it.
Okay, so it's an issue we need to resolve, get back to this person, and let him or her know why we didn't select him.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
That's
you. Just wanted to bring it for the record.
thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I would move the recommendation of staff and the subcommittee. And additionally, if I could ask staff to make sure that everyone else who applied but we did not appoint, either at the last meeting or this meeting, to make sure that they're included on the interested parties list so that they are continually updated and given the opportunity to participate, even though we didn't appoint them to the PAC.
Happy to do that.
We have a motion. Before we go to second, I'd like to amend, just clarify that. I would like to make sure we flush that entire list and make sure every name on that list has a response from us and an explanation of exactly why and how we went the way we went.
I'm willing to amend my motion to include that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion.
I'll make the second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Renee, good luck. West of luck. Okay, item number 7, approve resolution appointing members to the Technical Advisory Committee. Ms. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Resolution 0417, appointing members to the Technical Advisory Committee. The applications were somewhat limited in the sense that if the two large ag had the right to, because of their slot or their assignment to the PAC, they also had a TAC opportunity if they could recommend someone that was qualified that had technical abilities and qualifications. And so, but we have some categories where there were, for instance, small ag, business interests, one domestic well owner slot, did not submit anything yet. They're still able to do that, but at this time we've not received any applications. I imagine it's finding folks with that expertise can sometimes be challenging. But we're grateful that we had 8 applicants, and you have 8 assignments before you, and I'll go through them as seen in Exhibit A. And I'm going to skip one of them and come back to that and explain. We have one change to it. From Large Ag, Eddie Teasdale, Anthony Brown from Large Ag, but we're going to switch that one out at the request of the Large Ag group. Residential customers of a public water agency, Mr. Michael Powell. Domestic well owners, Don Decker. East Kern County Resource Conservation District, Earl Wilson. Wholesaler and industrial user, Adam Bingham. In Indian Wells Valley Water District, Renee. I always get her name wrong. So please say it, Renee. Marquecho. Thank you. And Department of the Navy, Stephen Borg. We have had a request from Large Ag to switch Anthony Brown because of his responsibilities at Aqualogic. They weren't sure that he could be here all the time. Is Mr. Nugent here? With your indulgence, it has Mr. Nugent to come and explain the change. Is that right, Mr.?
Thank you, Mr. Christensen, through the board. I appreciate he's helped me kind of through this process. Anthony Brown's been out here. I think a lot of you know him, and he's been a part of this process for a long time. He is the CEO of Aqualogic, and he's oftentimes both internationally and across the United States at different events. So while he's still going to remain involved, Wade Majors, who's here as well, he's actually the gentleman that presented the brackish water study, who's equally got a great resume and is equally well representative of Aqualogic. We know that the board would like to have a belly button, I think is the term Phil's used in the seat, versus an agency. And so we would request the belly button to be Wade, even though Anthony and Aqualogic are still going to be involved in supporting Wade. He'll just be the one that's actually the physical person in the seat if you guys approve that, and I would request that. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Sounds good to me.
If I can continue with that change, you have not. He submitted a resume. We believe staff's recommendation is that he is qualified to fill that slot. So our recommendation is to replace Mr. So the exhibit would change. It would be Wade Major as from Aqualogic as a large ag appointment. Hello. Can you hear me? All right. I'll speak loud. And with that change, we would ask that you approve Resolution 04-17, and that is the end of my report.
Thanks, sir. Let's open it up for public comment. We're having a little problem with our microphones, but now's a chance for public comment on this particular item. Anybody wishing to make comment on item number 7? Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Yes, sir.
The other thing I wanted to point out, Mr. Chair, is that there should also be an asterisk for non-voting membership for Indian Wells Valley Water District. It's currently in the exhibit that we provided in our packet. It's missing an asterisk.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question. Just so everyone understands, we ask that the PAC be residents of the Indian Wells Valley Water Basin. I want to make sure that we understand that there are members of the TAC who are not residents of the Indian Wells Valley Water District Basin, but the Indian Wells Valley Basin, but are representatives of those people. So I just want to state it for the record because the question was asked, how come they had to be, but these didn't? So just so we understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Looking for a motion.
I'll move that we select and approve Exhibit A and Exhibit B, I guess.
Second.
Exhibit B.
Oh, there is no Exhibit B. I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion. To say that motion again one time for me?
That we approve the resolution and adopt the Technical Advisory Committee as stated in Exhibit A with the correction that Anthony Brown is now Wade Major.
Thank you, sir. Is that your second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Please say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving along. Report from Policy Advisory Committee. Before we begin this one, I want to tell you how thrilled I am that we have a person not only appointed but elected to represent the Policy Advisory Committee. I've had the pleasure of working with Ms. Thomas in past. I found her to be diligent, hardworking, complete in her analysis, and courageous in her ability to step forward and speak her piece. So putting you on a platform like that, Donna, I'm sure you're going to hate my guts, but I'm glad the PAC, their first decision was a good one. And could we please have a report from the Policy Advisory Committee? Ms. Thomas.
Donna, that speaker should be on if you... My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. We've had our second meeting now. We met first on June 29th, 2017, and met this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Water District. I would like to thank the board for offering the services of Lorelei Oviatt as an assistant and a big help to our discussions for the PAC group. Thanks to Kern County and Kern County Planning Department. She's also there in an advisory position as well. I'd like to now report the actions that we took, the formal actions that we took this morning. Our first action was to recommend to the GSA that they initiate the procedure to add the Inyo Kern Community Services District as the disadvantaged community representative voting member, and that the Inyo Kern CSD be allowed also to make appointments to the TAC. And also, we would like to offer the opportunity for the board to make an appointment for the Trona disadvantaged community area. There was no one present there at our meeting this morning, but Mr. Carroll was present as the director on the board of the Inyo Kern CSD to ask for membership on the PAC. We will consider the addition of Trona after receiving information from Trona and Searles Valley Minerals at a later board meeting hearing. And we would like that person, if they desire to have a direct TAC representative, able to make an appointment to the TAC as well and be a voting member. Also at the meeting, there was a motion made and approved by the board, by the committee members, not really the board, to accept the offer of services of Eddie Teasdale and Kennedy Jenks at no cost to the PAC, offered by one of our PAC members, to assist with a list of grant opportunities, including Prop 1 opportunities and other grant opportunities for funding. I handed out a list of things that we went over. These were questions and requests for clarifications from our June 29th meeting. We went through those at today's meeting. We crossed out some because we felt they had been addressed. But the ones that are still in place are up for clarification by the board. One of the recommendations that we'd like to make is to consider appointing or having each PAC member appoint an alternate to attend the meetings. It's especially difficult to get a quorum during the summer meeting times. And with a Prop 1 deadline coming up pretty quick, we'd like to get some input into that and a review of that. And I know it hasn't been in the bylaws, but we would like to ask the board to consider it. For instance, today, our vice chair was not there. He was on vacation. And I had a situation where I was in the emergency room with my daughter from 3 o'clock this morning. And I didn't know for sure whether I would be able to make the meeting. So I think it would be a good idea if we could have alternates. Also, I'd like to thank Lorelei and her staff for putting together a little booklet for us of important background materials so that we have it handy right in front of us when we need to refer to something in the bylaws, in the JPA documents, in the Prop 1 guidelines, in the GSP guidelines. All of these things have been included and more. Plus, the members were allowed to request any additional items That should be included in the notebook. We have discussed our next meetings. It will not be possible to have a second meeting in July, as the PAC had discussed at our June 29th meeting. They wanted 2 meetings in July and 2 in August. We won't have a second meeting in July. However, in August, we are looking at August the 3rd and August the 24th for an evening meeting at 6 p.m. for the convenience of our staff help, our administrative assistant help from Lorelei. And we will send out emails to the PAC members to determine who can attend and be sure that we have a quorum. Thank you very much.
Donna, could you give those dates again for August?
August 3rd and August 24th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Let's open it up for public comment. Anybody in the public wishing to make comment on the Policy Advisory Committee's report? Lorelei, did you want to make comment? Okay. I seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for comment, consideration, and a motion.
I have a question. Are we I know you're looking for answers on some of these things. How do we go about answering their questions? Because the items have not been on the agenda. I don't want to spend forever trying to accommodate the Brown Act and still, I don't want to end it there. I want to accommodate the Brown Act, but I want to find a way to be able to accomplish something. And that's my concern. How do we make these answers without going another month or two?
Yeah, one of the discussions we had at the 29th meeting was about future meetings. And at that time, I quickly did the math on my my phone here, and calculator, and on my calendar, and I discovered that there was really no way to get anything out of a second meeting because I can't get it on the agenda. We didn't have time with the 4th of July weekend and everything going on. So as example today, one of the issues the PAC is asking for is to set its schedule. Well, the PAC doesn't set the schedule. The board made the choice in the bylaws to set the schedule because of staffing reasons. And we don't have an agenda item for that. So if they want to meet on August 3rd and you're okay with that, that won't be a regular meeting until we can set a regular meeting schedule. The other issues are the same. They're great things to add for our next board meeting, but we need to get them on the agenda so that you can do that. So from a timing perspective, if the PAC would like something on an agenda for this board, they really should meet 2 weeks out. That gives them 1 week between the time that they make whatever decision they make for us to then put it into the agenda cycle and get it onto the agenda. So if they're going to have meetings before the board meeting, while they can report what they did, you're not going to be able to take action on them. So that's just the difficulties of the Brown Act.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sure.
Lorelei Oviatt, Director of Planning and Natural Resources. So I'm acting as a clerk to the PAC, not working through the chair. And the chair, the entire PAC did determine they wanted evenings. Just wanted to be clear about that. This is probably my mistake. I read the bylaws very carefully. I think I stepped over the part where the PAC can set their own meetings. The PAC would like to set their own meetings since you wish to have aggressively moving it along. Having the board set those meetings complicates this. The PAC, so I'm just suggesting that you change your bylaws, let the PAC do this, because to get a quorum, what it means is the PAC picks these 2 dates. I then, as clerk, am going to have to send out an email and say, who can attend this? Do we have a quorum? The size of this PAC and the number we need for a quorum of voting members is going to slow this down. So that's just my suggestion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, let me sort of respond to that briefly. So, part of what you have to do is say regular meeting date for the PAC. And that has to be done by law, set forward in a resolution saying this is our regular meeting date. If the PAC needs to have special meetings because the regular meeting date isn't working or there are other issues, there are provisions in the bylaw that allow PAC members to ask the board chair for that authorization and the board chair to then allow that meeting to go forward. So we need to set a regular meeting date. They do have mechanisms in the bylaws to deal with issues that come up.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other comments? I have a thought.
How do they ask the chair when they have to wait for our meeting to meet? Can they just send an email to the chair and we give you permission to approve those? That to me seems much more able to get it done quicker than to simply wait for our next meeting so you can say yes.
And we don't have to wait. They don't have to have a meeting. If they need a special meeting, Mick and I believe you're going to be the chair next, will have the ability to set that special meeting without going back to the board. Just like Mick has now for your board, he can call a special meeting outside of the regular meeting schedule. It's set up so that all they have to do is ask Mick and through an email, and they'd be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I respect the Brown Act immensely, and I work diligently to keep us within the boundaries of the Brown Act, but I have no problem with authorizing the PAC to have their August meetings as you scheduled. So August 3rd is a good one, and we will get into the routine of making, managing, and communicating and getting those things going. But right now, let's get airborne. So August meetings are okay by me. Anybody else got questions about the August meetings? Yes, sir. Okay. Before I let you pass it off to you, Ms. Page, I wanted to, why don't I just pass it off to you? Go ahead, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Commander.
One of the things that Ms. Thomas mentioned was adding seats for disadvantaged communities, and I was wondering if she could summarize for the board the discussion about that, because the way the bylaws are written, they were written in a way that there are 11 voting members of the PAC, and there are specific seats on the PAC, and there's a provision in there that says that at least one of those 11 voting members should also represent a disadvantaged community. And there are people who we've appointed that would meet that qualification. So I would like to understand why the PAC would like to add seats rather than having Searles Valley Minerals serve as the disadvantaged community because they provide water service to a disadvantaged community, or anybody else that's already on it that provides services or lives within a disadvantaged community.
There were three, at the June 29th meeting, we discussed three existing PAC members who could represent disadvantaged communities. And those were the East Kern RCD and the Searles Valley Minerals member and private well owner members who may be individually in areas of disadvantaged community designation. However, I did ask to take it back to my East Kern RCD board for discussion. And our board brought up the facts that as a board, we do not have direct contact with the Inyo Kern Community Services District or those wells that were on the map. Even though we're supposed to be representing them, we would not know their specific issues and concerns and their ideas maybe for the Prop 1 DAC founding, that sort of thing. We didn't feel we could speak for them and so we set up a meeting with our administrative committee to attend a board meeting of the Inyo Kern Community Services District, and we sent a letter to them asking for an agenda item at their board meeting. And our administrative committee, consisting of three of our board members, myself, Stan Rotora, and Judy Decker, attended the CSD meeting on July 13th, discussed the letter with them, and discussed the reason it was important for DACs to take part, both in the PAC and giving input to the Prop 1 proposals. We left it up to them to make the decision whether they wanted to have direct representation or if they felt that East Kern could be able to represent them. And this morning, as I said, Director Carroll from their board came to our meeting and expressed an interest to have direct representation on the PAC. Also, for the Trona issue, there was a member of the public today at our meeting who lives in Trona and who commented to us that it's fine for you to say that Searles Valley Minerals, as a separate business group, is going to represent the disadvantaged communities. But she felt also it was important for the members of the community themselves to have input and discuss having their own direct representation in some way.
And do you remember the name of the resident?
Name of the person from Trona?
Yeah. The reason I asked is there was an applicant for the PAC that was a resident of Trona, but I think the committee made the right choice in terms of who they recommended to fill the last seat on the PAC that we approved earlier, because that person's been more involved, has some expertise. The other person from Trona hadn't attended a meeting up to now.
Right.
So I thought that was the right recommendation.
Right,
So
and the reason we kind of put that one to the future and didn't make any motion today is because the vice chair, Steve Goddard, was not there as the representative for Searles Valley Minerals. And we felt that he and that community should have more input into that decision.
Camila.
Sorry, just minor step back, just on the recurring meetings for the PAC. Is it within the bylaws for us as the board to just say that we want them to meet monthly, period, and then let them have the flexibility of establishing when within that month they do it?
The problem is the law requires the board to set a regular meeting date.
Date or schedule?
State schedule.
Well, they mean different things to me. Date is a date, a schedule is a recurrence.
12 dates, schedule, however you'd like to say it. We need to know what the monthly, they don't even have to meet monthly. They can meet 2 weeks. However you want to set that schedule, you need to have a regular meeting date per the Brown Act. And what that means is 72-hour notice for those agendas. Special meetings have a 24-hour notice period, and they can be called as the case needs, and we've got the bylaws set for that to happen. The real issue with the PAC meetings is when they're wanting to bring things forward today, like asking to have appointments and these issues, we need to have time to put it on the agenda so that we can turn it into an action item. I mean, today, even our discussion has to be truncated because people need to be noticed and have noticed that this is an issue they need to be thinking about if they're interested in it. So you got to deal with the Brown Act. If you're going to have a meeting from the PAC and they want action from the board, it really should be 2 weeks out, but they can meet however many times they want in between.
Thanks, Tom. Camila.
They can meet however many times. They can meet however many times they want to in between, but it doesn't have to be a specific date as long as they provide us enough notice for agenda items. I'm just trying to get the intent of the Brown Act,
yes,
as opposed to getting lost in the wording of it. And if the intent of it is that what their output gets to us in enough time to get on the agenda, then I don't necessarily think that means establishing a date. I think that's just establishing ground rules for input.
Well, there's two things. There's establishing a date, and really think of it as the notice. You want the public to know when they need to be at a meeting to be heard, to get their voice heard. So you got to step back to it's not that it's an agendized meeting, it's the notice so the public knows when. So with that in mind, you have a regular meeting date, which requires 72-hour notice, and then you can set special meetings above and beyond that. Or you could have, Board of Supervisors in Kern County have a regular meeting almost every week. So.
Thank you. There's no doubt in my mind that Ms. Thomas and I are going to come to a mutual understanding, and we're going to be able to make a presentation for our September meetings. They're going to fully comply with the Brown Act. and fully comply with the desires of this board, so it will have a full voice into their schedule. And the members of the PAC will also have the opportunity to come together to make sure that the best time is being made available.
Just clarify one thing.
Quickly.
Thank you. I'll run.
You don't have to run.
Chairman Gleason, members of the board, there was no representation when this motion was made that your board would take any action today on any of the items they brought forward. It was understood by the PAC that this would be future agendized items.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. But I want to say and satisfy the Brown Act that I can tell our PAC leader that August meetings are good the way she's, I can say that right now.
You can say that right now as
August
your
3rd, August 3rd
authority.
sounds good to me if it's good to you, and we'll take these other issues up for consideration and agendize them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could we also ask staff support for the PAC to help?
Sorry, I apologize. We also ask staff support for the PAC to help them make sure that their agenda descriptions meet the Brown Act. There's some things on here for the meeting this morning that are, I don't know if the public would be clear as to what they are based on the agenda. To say discussion materials for notebooks is not clear to the public what that means. So
Okay.
the Brown Act also requires that the agendas themselves, that when somebody reads it, they kind of get a general idea of what the entity is going to be doing.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Like I explained to Ms. Thomas before the meeting, I said we are at the very beginning stages, so we all need to be patient. We all need there's so many things to do in so little time, and I'm appreciative of the PAC getting together on such a quick notice to give us their first inputs. I sincerely appreciate that. Look forward to more, and we're going to get this all ironed out in a process that's compliant with the Brown Act entirely. So I'm looking, if there's no other discussion among the board members, I'm looking for a motion to receive and file the PAC recommendations.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Done. Thank you, Pat. Good job. Moving us to item number 9, discussion action to prepare Proposition 1 grant funding applications. Mr. Christensen, takes away.
Everybody would benefit in seeing this. The solicitation package is going to be available to the agencies next month. We have draft material that's been submitted. There's already workshops that are occurring. The applicant workshops will begin, they're not dated yet, but we assume they'll be in September sometime. The grant application deadline is October of 2017, so any critically overdrafted basin will need to submit their applications by October. We do not have a date yet, a date certain yet, but we know that that's a deadline. Grant funding awards will be announced by DWR in December of 2017, and then there's a continuous filing deadline that comes after that. And depending on how many grant applications they get and how much money is left over, there will be an opportunity to sort of a moving second round of applications where you could either apply it again, or if you didn't get funded in the first group, you could apply there or resubmit your application, and they would, again, depending on how much money is available from the grant pot of money. And then release of funding awards, we assume for the continuous filing would be sometime later that year in spring of 2018. So that's the deadline.
You gonna fix all of our?
But I wanted to go back to this slide. All of those deadlines are down the road. The key thing that we need to do between now and October is to assess what is needed in our grant applications. Because they're competitive and they need to be specific, there's quite a bit of detail that's required for those kinds of applications. So, and that white area up at the top, grant projects needs assessment, and then you see an arrow to the WRM. That's the Water Resources Manager. The Water Resources Manager, which we believe will soon be hired, perhaps the board will do that today, is the key team or individual that will coordinate this work. Because much of it is technical in nature, that person will be key. They obviously will be working really closely with the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, to identify projects or activities that point to completing a GSP. A lot of this is studies, data gathering and development, a system for a model for the basin. And also working with the PAC. The PAC has expressed interest in being involved in this as well. So that's an overview of what we have before us. It is time critical. We do not. I would say that if I were doing this myself, I wish we'd have 6 months. I think that's a more reasonable timeline to do it the right way, but we don't. So we're going to have to hurry up and do that. So one of the things that I recommend in the staff report is that we appoint a subcommittee to work on, at least to start developing a list and some ideas for activities and projects that would be reasonable and identifying as best they could costs associated with that. And so I have spoken with Don Zadiba, who is not here today, and asked him if he would be part of a subcommittee. He's also on the PAC, and I have not talked with him, but it would make sense if someone else on the PAC, perhaps Commander Longbottom, and those two persons be a subcommittee, communicate with the PAC, but also start developing a list of activities or projects that could be given to the Water Resource Manager when that person is on board, and hopefully that is clear. So our recommendation is my recommendation is to appoint a small subcommittee to do that. You could expand that if you wanted to, but I have every confidence in Mr. Zadiba and Commander Longbottom and anybody else you feel would appropriate. Here's why I would not want to, we could give this to the PAC, but you've heard some of the challenges of meetings. It's the summer. We don't have the luxury of waiting for meetings to get a lot of this work done. So under normal circumstances, we'd let the PAC run with this and they'd have plenty of time, but I just don't know that we have the time to turn that over to the PAC completely and then wait, because of the summer and so forth. Now, I may be wrong and the PAC may be offended by that, but I hope not. I say that only because the work needs to get started real quickly. So with that, I'll entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the report. Let's open for public comment and consideration. Anybody in the public wishing to make comment on this particular item, please come forward now. And that is item 9. Come on down. Speak up because I don't think your mic's going to be working.
Sure, thank you.
I just got,
Mr. Chairman,
I
members of
just
the
got
board.
a text from Ron Strand saying they're working on it and trying to get it fixed as soon as possible. So we know. So my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Paige Gosney from Gresham Savage on behalf of Meadowbrook Dairy would support Mr. Christensen's recommendation about having the Water Resources Manager kind of lead the charge and be responsible for preparing, coordinating, finalizing, submitting the grant application. I think it's important to do that, particularly with the time-sensitive deadlines. As to the subcommittee, I support as well the idea of enlisting Mr. Zadiba and Commander Longbottom as well on there. Our only suggestion would be to also include, or at least to consult in some formal manner, members of the newly appointed TAC, given the technical nature of the application and their insight into projects that may potentially be eligible for grant funding. I think that or we would recommend that at least one member of the TAC be they have the unique insight. They have the unique insight that would be particularly helpful, I think, towards identifying projects and maximizing the likelihood that funding is awarded and we get the money that we need.
Would you say your name was again?
Paige Gosney, G-O-S-N-E-Y.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Judy Decker, private citizen, domestic well owner. I believe the purpose of this grant, now what do I do, is to develop a GSP. You have many studies already. You need to find a way to develop the GSP, and the ultimate goal has to be outside water. Not brackish water, not wastewater, not potable water here, but outside source of water. And the sooner you get your plan developed to do that, the better and sooner the sustainability of this valley will be.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments? Thanks. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and consideration. Any takers?
Mr. Chair, I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
like to find a way to assign dates, because we all recognize that it's mandatory that we get started as soon as possible. Can we have the resource manager and both Commander Longbottom and Mr. Zadiba and the people that are going to be involved in the PAC say we want a meeting by, and we want recommendations by, because everybody is going to try to go off on their own, and I'm assuming they will. We find a way that we can work together and find resolution based on immediate action. I don't want us sitting around thinking the other person is doing it, so responsibility for must be our first criteria, and then see how we find the time to make that happen ASAP.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Regarding setting deadlines, Mr. Christensen mentioned that the board may select a water resource manager today, though that won't actually involve approving a contract for a water resource manager. So our next scheduled meeting is August 17th, and Phil is approving such a contract, something that qualifies to be accomplished in a special meeting if we didn't want to wait until the 17th to approve a contract?
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of setting dates, I think we need to remember the water resource manager won't actually be able to start working or get paid to start working until we approve a contract, even if we select one today.
Thank you, sir. Commander.
I'd be generally interested to hear what the PAC thinks about the notion of this being done outside of the PAC. If that's what I understand, is that you want Mr. Zadiba and I, which I'll be perfectly frank with you, I know Don's a very busy individual. I'm not going to be able to support August of 2017, the date you have on here, myself. So I would be cautious in pulling the subcommittee out when we have a very capable organization. If this is something they want to do, I think the PAC is the perfect place for this to be done. And Mr. Zadiba and I can definitely be a part of that. I worry about the two of us being pulled out and isolated. You know, it just creates a lot more coordination and the opportunity for miscues and miscommunication in an already complicated organization.
Thanks, sir.
My 2 cents.
Thanks.
May I ask a question? How do, and maybe I'm not giving enough credit to the PAC and Mrs. Thomas, but I know how much they want to do, I know how much they can do, but how do they come up with recommendations that have not been vetted except through them. I mean, you all are smart people, and I know you know what there is available, but there is only so much time and information that you have to do it all. I'm not saying that we should pull the PAC out of it. I want to see the PAC involved, and if it's all 12 or 14 or whatever people, I want to see them involved, but I want to see a way that there's a process immediately to do it. And you're only human beings, and we only have till October. And that's not tomorrow, but it isn't months and months from now either. So how the process for involving the entire PAC, I want to know how that comes back to us, and what you all think of that. I want to hear what the PAC has to think of it.
Thank you. Can I go ahead?
Thank you. And I want to make sure I'm clear. The item on the overhead, August of 2017, the package, the solicitation package, that comes from the state. That's not a deadline that we just know that package is going to be available. That's the final package that comes. Our deadline is October 2017 to submit this to the state. So we're not under that specter. The second thing is another, and I'm going to throw a curveball here, but based on one of the comments when we prepared the agenda, we didn't have a TAC. We knew we would likely have a TAC, but the gentleman from Gresham Savage that spoke, maybe this is best given to the TAC with some members of the PAC, Mr. Zadiba or others assisting. Maybe that's the best place for it since it is technical in nature. Just a suggestion.
Thanks, sir. My 2 cents worth is my understanding of this is that the funding is project oriented. Is that correct? And the due date is they're going to release the series of funding sources in August. We have till October to submit to match a project request based on the information we get in August. And then we will compete against others in each project. So I see us the GSA submitting multiple project requests before October. Is that your general idea of the process?
The terminology, it might be a little different, but I think the concept is the same, yes. Maybe one big project with lots of sub-activities that are, yes.
Great. I think that the project, in order to create a GSP, is going to be science-based. We need to know technical aspects of our basin in order to apply for projects, and I don't think the PAC is equipped to deal with defining the science or requesting to do another AEM study or to do another scientific analysis of brackish, whatever the science is that needs to be done in order for us to complete a GSP in a timely fashion. So I disagree, Commander. I think that the primary place where this belongs is the TAC. I believe the PAC has a role, and the PAC has got to integrate with this committee, and I think the TAC is going to be the place where they develop the projects that are going to be oriented towards matching funds to develop the GSP, because I think it's going to be technical in nature. I also agree that with Mr. Page that the water resource manager isn't going to really be on, whoever that person isn't really going to be on probably till July, so September. So he's going to be short. So I think what that leads me to the conclusion is that we need to get going sooner rather than later. And I think that having a committee with a couple people assigned to build this team would serve multiple functions. First, it's going to get us going in a direction. It's going to assemble the TAC. The TAC is going to understand the urgency to get formed, have their meetings, develop their leadership, and define. And they can do that in the process of defining these projects and these defining the funding sources and with matching projects. It can work to develop the PAC and orient the PAC or membership of the PAC. Maybe we could have 1 or 2 members represent the PAC on this subcommittee, and maybe we could have the TAC on this committee, and we could have 1 or 2 of us sit on this committee to steer it so that we can pass it off to the water resource manager as soon as he comes aboard. Say, this is the direction we're going in. hopefully it's something you're interested in. If it is, great. If it's not, take control. So long story short, I think that we need to get moving. I think it's a primary responsibility of the TAC. I think they're science-based. I'd be willing to take suggestions on that, but I think that we should nominate a committee now with 2 people and give them the tasking to mobilize the TAC, to coordinate with the PAC leadership to get representation from the PAC on this subcommittee, and then begin building a better understanding of Prop 1 funding and the requirements and the projects required to successfully compete to win those dollars. That's what I think.
Are you looking for approval of what you just said?
If that's what the board chooses, yes.
I agree that the TAC is the one that should be doing it. I guess in conjunction with those others that were mentioned, I guess so many projects have already been developed by the previous TAC for the groundwater management group. We need to find a way to utilize those both together.
Good point. Mr. Brown, you're awful quiet today.
Well, you're doing enough talking for me, which is really unusual.
I get the hint.
No, actually, it's kind of nice to not be noisy for a change for myself. I think that it's not as hard as it sounds. Once we get a groundwater manager person in that position, that'll automatically start to focus our efforts. We haven't done it yet, so all this is a little bit, it's hard because we really, really want to do everything right now. But the timing's off just a hair, and that's because of the dates. So I think what Mick said is fine. Once we get a groundwater manager, that guy will be the coordinator, or that group will be a coordinator for all these activities. And I believe that the PAC and the TAC will be involved. And I think what any manager would do is he would take all of his resources and pool them and use whatever skill sets he has at that place. And then if we need to fund something more or do something different, he'll do that. So I really don't see a problem. I think you can task the TAC with getting started with just building a team. And then I don't see a problem with whether we have a contract in September or whatever. Once it gets started, it'll get started. And phone calls can be made. The deal is once this grant is issued or once the parameters are defined, that's when the real action starts. And we already have projects that we've been talking about for quite a few years. It just depends on how they want to label the money is how we want to label those projects. So I think we're going to work just fine the way we're doing it right now.
So, yes, sir.
I wanted to get some clarification on one of the things you said, Mr. Chairman. You indicated until the Water Resources Manager is under contract, the thought of having either a subcommittee of the board or someone else support the TAC and getting this moving. Right now, the PAC has established that the Kern County's planning and department will be providing staff support to them. I don't know that anybody's decided who's going to be staff supporting the TAC at this point until we get the Water Resource Manager on staff. So I'm wondering, rather than identifying which of us on the board should be supporting the TAC, if we shouldn't be identifying who either from one of the member agencies has expertise in applying for grants like this might be able to work with the TAC rather than having one of us 5 work with them. And I'm not sure who that is, if Kern County has somebody that does that or if the Water District does. If the Water District provides that technical person with grant experience, I would just ask that it at least not be somebody who's being considered this afternoon for Water Resource Manager until we know what we're doing. But I think having staff at one of the member agencies who has experience with applying for these grants would probably be good to identify today as well so they can start working.
The county does not have that expertise. Any other thoughts, Mr. Harrington?
Looking at the timeline, looking at the timeline, this is a pretty short window to accomplish excellent grant application. And as we bounce around, who's going to prepare the application, what's going to be in it, the fact that the water resources manager is not going to be under contract for at least another month, to my mind, it would make sense to have that professional preparing the final grant application, but he or she won't be available for almost half of this window in which we have to get this done. So really, I think the way to approach this is in August, we'll have the final grant solicitation package. That will lay out the rules of the game that we need to follow for the next couple of months to prepare this. Make sure that the PAC and TAC and Groundwater Authority Board all together are familiar with that package, familiar with the contents, the regulations regulating what has to be in a groundwater sustainability plan, because that's really the major project that this grant's supposed to accomplish, is preparation of that plan. If we're all educated as to what those requirements are and have a good outline of what that plan is going to look like that we're trying to get funded, then come September, we'll be in a position to hand that over with the thinking of all these advisory committees and the board as well to the water resources manager, so that person can put the nuts and bolts together, dot the I's, cross the T's that are going to be required for the eligible grant application. So really, I think that's kind of what we've all been saying. The TAC needs to be part of this. The PAC wants to be part of it. A lot of the PAC members have expressed avid interest in this. Gresham, Savage, and Meadowbrook have been on top of this. It'll be good to have them involved in because they've already built up a lot of knowledge about what this grant is going to look like. So I think that's how this will roll out for the next couple of months, and it's going to roll out quick here. Next week we might be seeing that grant solicitation package. So I think that's how we should prepare for this.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask you a question to the Water District? The cooperative TAC, do they have an idea of projects lined up, or where are they in an understanding of any of this? Do you know?
Yeah, actually, we've been working on this for years, and then when the GSA was announced that this was going to be formed, we started to kind of prime the pump, so to speak, on what we perceived as projects that were needed, data gaps, etc. So that TAC functions incredibly efficiently, and everybody on there has been working together, and they're totally aware of what we have and what we need. And that's kind of what grants do. What do you need our money for? So I have full faith in that TAC to come up with a pretty easy punch list. The deal is how is this grant going to be crafted? And as everybody knows, it's all what you write that appeals to the words on the grant. But for sure, we have real projects, real needs, and easily quantifiable right this minute. So that could easily be facilitated and helped by that TAC.
Do those projects that you've identified, do those map to the development of a GSP?
They do, because we decided, well, we already had our plan, which was continually quantify the basin, the water quality, et cetera. But we also knew that while this is going on, let's go ahead and push it further. What can we get now that will facilitate us spending less money here, getting the information, putting together projects, drilling more wells, things like that, with the skill sets and the funding we had there. So yes, everything's there, totally functional to heavily front load a grant application. All you really need is a coordinator, and then to find out what's missing. And everybody's input would be valuable at that point, because there's a certain art form in writing grants besides the technical aspect. In fact, I think artists win more grants than technical people do, but that's another thing. So yes, the TAC from the cooperative, totally capable of doing just about anything, already has a list of things that they want to do and are currently doing, and it's even in a timeline of practical needs. This data gap is more important than this data gap to fill. So it's already kind of spelled out.
Mr. Page.
Yeah, if I can go along that same line of discussion regarding what the TAC has, for the cooperative, has already done, and Mrs. Decker also mentioned this, the work that they've done to date. Ms. Brown, you identified that the cooperative TAC has identified some gaps that need to be addressed data-wise that could be beneficial to the GSP. But this initial draft PSP that we have in our packet does identify as well that there's a local cost share of at least 50% for whatever money we get. So, and it says that expenses that have been incurred since after May 18th, 2016 can be considered as toward this cost share. So I think it would behoove us to have the TAC, when they're looking at projects to do, that they also should be looking at work that this community has done already that we can count towards that expense of local share at this point, because we need to realize we still only have $75,000 in the bank to provide as a local cost share for this, as well as pay for our water resource manager, our special counsel, and everything else. So I think one of the things the TAC should be looking at is what money has been spent locally that can help with the GSP development that might qualify as local cost share.
Mr. Page, thank you. There might be also a thought to, when the PAC began, we mobilized it by having a facilitator come in and get the first meeting airborne. We might be interested in doing that again with the TAC. And that may also help us with this issue, getting the TAC, understanding the issues, and working closer with the PAC and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if the Water District would be interested in maybe playing a role in that. And
Yeah, I was actually going to volunteer that before you told me. I would. I'm going to, because Don's not here, I'm going to volunteer his time and resources to facilitating the very first TAC meeting. I know you can send him a text and tell him I said that. For sure, because we're already in that. We're water. Don's totally aware of it, and he's an excellent facilitator. So we'll do that.
Thanks, sir. Okay, so that's a good discussion, and I think we're coming into a little better focus on this issue, and I need a motion for action.
Is there an action?
I don't know. Depends upon the motion.
Well, are we motioning? Are we going to make a motion? Okay, I'm going to make the motion. You guys can adapt as you see fit. I make a motion that we utilize the Water District to begin the TAC and help them facilitate it and use the TAC both from the Cooperative Groundwater Management Group and the projects and the TAC from the GSA to proceed as expeditiously as possible. Have I covered it all?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Water District. This is a good one. Item number 10 is report on POA&M for the groundwater sustainability plan. Mr. Christensen.
Not to be repetitive, but you've seen this report before. It's when printed out, it's very legible on a big sheet of paper, and it's on a kind of an all-in-one document. This, as we've said before, will be handed over to the new water resource manager, and if I were him, I'd be thankful that I have something like this to start working from. Now, I thought I would draw your attention to a couple of things. And you have this. I know it's difficult to read, but if you get your reading glasses on, you can you can see some things. At the top on the left, there's a task, just to show you how this is working. Task 1, if you go down about 3 lines, task 1.1.2, Policy Advisory Committee meetings. And that has at least on this report, if you go over to the calendar, it's an early August timeline. So you've met that. And then below it, you have a technical advisory committee meetings, about the same timeline, August. Now that's they're a little behind, so you've met those, and those will go forward. So these are just examples of some things. Now go further down, and I'm going to go down about a third of the way, and there's under the task 1.2.2. There's it's again about a third. It says define water budget. Now, if you were looking down the road and you wanted a major objective to look towards as a board, and you looked over at you followed that define water budget, that goes from December of 2017 through January of 2018. That is there's lots of steps that would lead to that, but that is a big policy. That's going to determine what your budget is going to determine what you can extract from groundwater from the basin. It's the big thing that all of the critically overdrafted basins in the state will have to deal with. So that's that's example of a big deal. So that's our timeline for that. That's pretty close. Now, we have a lot of studies that indicate what that number is. Anywhere from 7,000 acre feet to 14,000 or whatever, 11, or I've seen numbers, but get a better idea of what that number is. Let me go one further down to, now that would be the primary responsibility of the water resource manager, again, to direct that work. Further down, and I'm going to go 2/3 down the way, task 2.4, identify grant opportunities and make recommendations to authority. The timeline is August of 2017. We're a little bit ahead of that, but we didn't know the deadline for grants would be October of 2017. Again, that's the water resource manager. Again, just to give you an idea of what we're going to give to the water resource manager, the PAC ought to be aware of these deadlines and continue to give us input. But once that manager comes on board, it'll be his or her or that team's job to make modifications to this, add to it, fill in more detail, because there'll probably be more detail that can be done, and that they can come back and give you a report. We've sort of been in a holding pattern because I'm not a technician, Phil's not a technician. You have actually more technicians on the board than or at least one technician on the board that can talk the talk. So anyway, just to give you a sense of what's on here, I don't have any recommendations for you, but I think this is a great document that you'll see. Hopefully next meeting we'll have a water resource manager. That's my hope, and they can give you a report on this and maybe update it.
Thank you, sir. Let's open to the public for comment and consideration. Can anyone read this? No. Raise your hand if you can read it. Anybody read it? Okay, thanks. Anybody in the public wishing to make comment on this? Okay, let's close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Mr. Brown.
I think the next time I have a board meeting, I'm going to put all my font in -1. It'll save a lot of time. So anyways, we can't read it, but it represents what we had already talked about. I think the whole point of this project planner is that there's a reality factor built into it, and it's all very possible. And the whole point of this is don't get behind, And so in that sense, it's fine. Our momentum will pick up. It is picking up. We have a TAC, we have a PAC. Pretty soon we'll have a manager. This timeline will be adjusted. I see it as being a push for the grant application, but honestly, if we can control how many meetings we have and we have enough meetings, then it'll all work out just fine. So I'm fine with the project planner that you have. I don't know if it needs to be adopted or just observe that it's realistic.
My 2 cents, I think this is going to be the focus document for all activity from here until January of 2020. I think the PAC and the TAC are going to play an active role in the management, monitoring, development, and continued adjustment of this plan as we move forward. And I encourage everybody to, is this posted online?
Is it?
It is posted online? Beautiful. So it's online so the public can have ready access to it. And anytime we make adjustments to it, we update continually this PONM?
It has been by the generator.
Outstanding.
It's not readable. What's online is unreadable.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that input. Let's make it readable. Let's make it working. I think this is the most important document we have to date in order to achieve success, and we need to treat it like it is, like it needs to be. So what actions do we need to make it readable online?
I think you just need to upload the PDF version.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the version that gets scanned and put in the notes, just the separate standalone.
We can fix it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have that updated POANM fixed online by when?
By today's Thursday, Friday.
Okay, so tomorrow we're going to have a POANM for public review and board review and thought. And as far as distributing it to the PAC and the TAC, it'll be online, so everybody will have access to it.
We'll send the link out to everyone.
Beautiful. Okay, any other thoughts? I agree with, I just want to finish my comments by saying I agree with Mr. Brown. I think this is going to be the document that we're going to be able to look at, scrutinize, and say, where are we, what do we got to do, and what are we behind on, and where do we need to surge our resources, and where are we doing okay? This is a critical component of our success, and I appreciate your thoughts on that, and I want to make sure it's available to the public so everybody knows what we're doing. Okay, what motion are we looking for on this one?
None?
No motion? Don't need a motion?
No motion.
Any other thoughts before I close out this item? Thank you. Moving on, number 11, approve agreement with James Markman of Richards, Watson, and Gershon as special legal counsel. Ms. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Taking you back, a two-member committee of the board screened some applications that we received for a special legal counsel for the Groundwater Authority. That was Mayor Breeden and Board Member Page. They recommended 3 finalists to interview with the entire board. The board interviewed those individuals and has chosen Mr. James Markman to serve as special counsel to the board on an as-needed basis. The services to be performed will be provided as directed by the authority's board of directors, the general manager, or general counsel, and shall include occasional board of director meetings, legal research, legal advice to the authority, participation in preparation and review of resolutions, agreements, and other documents, negotiating all terms, rights, and obligations contained in the GSP, and other legal advice as needed by the board. It's a pretty standard agreement. Either the Groundwater Authority or Mr. Markman may terminate the agreement within 30 days written notice. Costs for legal services will be calculated on an hourly basis as found in Exhibit A of the agreement. Their maximum rate of $325 an hour. Much less for other lesser services. Mr. Markman's services will be available to the board, and he is an independent attorney that works for the board. So the attorneys from the city, the county, and the water district will continue to the rotational basis, preparing agendas, giving general legal advice and process legal advice. You could expand on that. That will continue. Mr. Markman will provide legal advice to the entire board above and beyond, specifically on water and groundwater matters. Staff's recommending approval of the agreement with Mr. Markman of the firm Richards, Watson, Gershon to serve as special counsel.
Thank you, sir. Let's open the public hearing. Anybody out there have any thoughts on this particular item? Yes, ma'am.
Renee West Delusk. I just want to know, can you just repeat or clarify about the when he will be asked? It's just like on an as-needed basis? Can you just explain like when you will need him, sort of?
Which comes with no answers.
This goes back to when we were first forming the JPA. We were kicking around whether we should have a sole independent legal counsel for the GSA to do everything, general counsel work and water work. And frankly, this GSA is really lucky. It has 3 attorneys that are representing its members that are water attorneys. So, you know, we've got we really got to head up on the game to that extent. But at some point in time, we might have a disagreement, or frankly, we just need an outside voice. So the concept was we'd have an outside voice. As needed, it really means whenever the board wants to put a check on us. So the general concept was to have this outside voice, give some, check on the 3 of us, bring in somebody else, and as needed, because it's whenever the board would like.
Can I help with the answer to that one, Renee? Because that's a really good question.
Yes, thank you.
It's an as-needed function, and we're going to require his specialized services in water, and we're going to use him as needed, and he's paid on an hourly basis. The counsel we have here, the lawyers we have here, provide the function. The 3 lawyers are great water lawyers, but their job is to provide counsel. So they're going to be board counsel, and they're going to rotate with the chair. So this year and last year, Kern County was the chair. Kern County brought the counsel. Next year, per schedule, the city of Ridgecrest is going to be the chair, and they will provide their counsel. So Philip won't be here anymore, and Keith will be assuming that role. And it rotates. The counsel will rotate with the chair, and we will retain the services of an outside water expert that has those connections that we may be able to need sometime down the road. But we're going to pay him on an hourly basis as needed.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Okay. So he won't be paid on a regular basis.
Correct.
Only when needed. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Good question. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and consideration. Whatever.
I'd like to move that we accept the agreement for professional legal services for Mr. Markman as stated in our board packet.
I'll second that, but I have a question of clarification.
Yes, sir.
The staff report as well as the contract itself indicate that the special counsel will provide these services as directed by the board, the chief executive, or general counsel. Are we going to discuss how that is? I mean, usually contracts will say the CEO is the appointing authority or responsible for managing the work of a contractor. Here we've laid out that it could be the board, general manager, or general counsel. So I'm assuming that was to give us flexibility, but in terms of how we actually make this work, will staff only direct if they give direction from the board? Is that your intent? At least we get that on the record.
Go ahead.
That is the intent at this stage, and I think the way we would stay with this board. Frankly, county counsel's office is able to seek outside advice without going to the board, but I don't think we're going to be doing that in any way, shape, or form. But because he is on retainer, I could see a situation where the board chair and the vice chair direct him to do something in preparation for the next meeting without having to go through the whole rigmarole of bringing it back for the board to say, yes, let's do that. So Besides that, you want general counsel on there as part of the direction to bring him into the attorney-client privilege chain and to get all the information.
The intent in my mind is that the board or the chairman is going to be the approval authority to engage the outside water lawyer, so at the advising of board counsel. So we'll be the authority.
And let me add to that. It's a really good question. Lots of times, practically speaking, we're intermediaries for the board, and that's what the intent is. Like, for instance, forming the legal question might be written by Mr. Hall, or you direct me to do something. That is the intent of what we're proposing here.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Have we made a motion on this? Do we have a second? Oh, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving to item number 12, General Manager's Report. Mr. Christensen.
I will, in my desire to actually have a meeting end before 11 o'clock or before noon, I'm going to say that I had a really nice 4th of July vacation and just really did, and it was great. So I have no other comments. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Board member closing comments. Yes, sir.
I'd say this one half jokingly, but as a non-voting member who can't vote against himself being volunteered or told to do something, would appreciate a heads up prior to the meeting to provide some feedback that said individual should be volunteered.
No, that's why I did it.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Closing comments? Mr. Harrington.
Supervisor Kingsley expresses his regrets for not being here. He had another meeting he had to attend today, far afield, and wishes he could have been here.
I'm sure he does. Outstanding. I have closing comments. I want to thank the BLM for working with the county to create those retention pools up in off of Freeman Gulch. If anyone's noticed, I want to thank Ms. Quist back there too. We had an opportunity to get some bulldozers out there and not do a major renovation or any major work, but we did create an opportunity for at least a first start in capturing stormwater runoff when it's released from the aqueduct. So thanks to BLM for working with us and getting all the environmental requirements done and all that stuff. It was a pleasure working with you. Second thing is we all noticed that we're missing a familiar face here. We have, a wonderful face with Lauren, but we're missing a Miss Dale Schaefer, who was blessed, was good enough to be with us for a long time, coming and working on a contract with DWR in the county as a facilitator. Her funding ran out. She did a great job. I need her address from somebody so we can send her a thank you note and to send her our sincere thanks for all she did to get us to where we are today. Any other closing comments? Okay, we're going to close this open session and we're going to retire to closed session where we're going to talk about items that are listed on the agenda. And then after that, we're going to come back and we're going to set the date and time of next meeting. Or the date and time of next meeting, we can do that right now. It's going to be August 17th, 2017, 10 o'clock, so you guys don't have to wait. And then we'll come adjourn after closed session. So I'm looking for a motion to retire to closed session.
May I ask a question
Yes,
first?
ma'am.
Is it possible, we were talking about keeping until September before we could even deal with this. Is it possible for us to have a meeting to develop the contract for this facilitator and our general manager to do it and get started sooner? Because all we're going to do is if we have that one item on it. So can we set that up in 2 weeks or whatever it is so we can get started?
Yeah, when I started hearing September, I was wondering if I misheard Bob's question. Maybe I didn't hear it or not. We can do a water resource manager contract at a special meeting, and if that's going to be the only thing on the agenda, also we could have one of our phone call-ins where our two board members have to travel quite a bit, could just call in too. So I mean,
Good. Let's do that.
Good chance we could have something in 2 weeks, a week, if we're there.
Great.
The sample contract's already been sort of put together and I believe circulated, wasn't it, while I was out, Alan? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Look for a motion to adjourn. to closed session.